Hi, welcome to the Q&A for Queer AF. I am Ellison, the Programming Director for SAAFF. On behalf of SAAFF, I would like to welcome the filmmakers who are here with us today. Please introduce yourselves, where you're joining us from, and what film you worked on.
Hey everybody, I'm Cuerdo. I am the director and writer of a film called Dancing on My Own, and I'm also in it with my mom, and I'm calling in from Brooklyn. And I popcorn it to Niki.
Hi, I'm Niki. I'm the co-writer and director of Where You Gay in High School. I'm calling in from Los Angeles, but I actually grew up in the Seattle area, so very happy to be showing at this festival. Thanks for having us. Kevin.
Oh, we're playing this game. Hi, everybody. I'm Kevin Jang Wang, and I am the writer and director for Blue Suit, and I'm calling in from Los Angeles. And popcorn to Dane.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dane Neves. I'm calling in from Hawaii, and my film is called Parental Guidance Suggested.
Thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. This is definitely one of my favorite programs in the festival. And we will start off by asking you what inspired you to make the films. Like, what was the moment when you thought, I have to make this a reality?
Yeah, so the film is like loosely based on a conversation that my co-writer Karen Du, she's also a cinematographer on the project, had. She and I have been friends for, a long time, a couple of years, but always as like adult and like openly queer. And so it was funny to be like, who were you in high school? And like, were you gay in high school? Of course we were, we're gay now, but being closeted in high school, the answer is also kind of like, no, because nobody that I went to high school with was like, oh yeah, she was gay back then, because I wasn't, because I was closeted. And so, having this conversation with a friend of mine and thinking about who we used to be and just like the varying degrees of closeted and out and what we were comfortable with and the very confusing things that we were experiencing. High school is like a very formative time. People start dating and kissing and more than that. So it's can be very confusing when you're closeted and you don't know any other queer people and you don't know what to do. So we wrote down to like the most like awkward, weird, like uncomfortable and cringy stories and we put that into a script and animated part of it, and that's what happened.
Yeah, so with my film Blue Suit, it was really inspired from, it's loosely inspired by something that happened to me in real life. And so what had happened in my life was I had feelings for a friend, and I think what had transpired after that was just realizing that, spoiler alert, it doesn't work out. And from my real life events I just found that, like, how am I going to process these feelings of heartbreak? And I started writing naturally in order to process my feelings. And as I was doing that, I realized that I didn't really see a lot of queer Asian Americans in like this type of setting where it's just like there is no sense of like you have to come out, you're just there, it's in your adult life, and it's just a story about unrequited love, and but just the two leads are queer Asian men. And I just wanted to kind of take something that was my own story and hopefully inspire folks who could resonate with a story that typically in film and TV that we see with cis, straight, sometimes most of the time white folks. And so just wanted to push that story out there, and that's how Blue Suit got made.
Aside from filmmaking, I'm also a puppeteer, and a lot of my creative projects have some kind of puppet in it. So I wanted to kind of make kind of a strong statement, a strong social statement with my puppetry. So that's why I made my film Parental Guidance Suggested, which is kind of like Sesame Street for parents, where I have these two puppets interacting with a bunch of LGBT leaders in our community, talking to parents about how to raise their gay child.
I just want to first say, like, I'm obsessed with everyone's origin stories. I think they're so good. Mine is definitely a little bit more of a like rough and tumble kind of story. It was my mom basically and I have had like a really complex relationship, and that all kind of came to the surface when I went to my first I would say queer Asian rave, if that's even a thing anywhere else. But there's a queer Asian rave in New York called Bubble Tea that I've sort of become a big fan of and sort of part of that community. And that was really for me the first time that I was able to kind of see other people express themselves fully, and people that kind of looked like me, you know, that were Asian and American and kind of in between both worlds. And that was revolutionary for me. And so I really wanted to chronicle that in a documentary form. The grant process that I had to kind of finance the documentary was through this company called Visco. And all of my grant advisors were like, "Oh, we love the idea for the film, but where are you in it?" And I was like, "Well, I'm not an actor, so I don't, you know, I don't do the in front of the camera thing." But their point was, you know, this party is so important because of the people it's impacted, you know, and the sort of community that it's built around it. And so my story became part of the story of Bubble Tea, and that kind of art imitating life, imitating art has also actually happened because now I'm kind of like part of this amazing group of creatives in New York, and part of the Bubble Tea family. So it's a happy ending at the end of it.
Yeah, I love that. Like for all of your films, for those who are in this Q&A in particular, all revolve around our experiences in such different yet all connected ways. And some of you touched a little bit on this already, but how did you approach writing and showing your personal experiences in this? Like, how much were you playing with wanting to show the world like what you had experienced and gone through, whether it was like documentary or narrative? How much of yourself did you put into this comfortably, if that makes sense?
I have to say uncomfortably, but also comfortably.
I +1 to Ali about comfortably and uncomfortably. Like I said, like Blue Suit is loosely based off of something that happened to me, and you know, I put a lot of myself in it, and the main character is a version of me that I like to say is a better version of me. I wish I was John, the main character, but I am not. And so I really feel like throughout the process of writing Blue Suit, I actually found myself oftentimes having to step away from it because it was hitting too close to home. And the feelings I would get, I would have to unearth the heartbreak over and over and over again. And it had been a couple years since it had happened. And I had found myself like so invested in these characters to the point that it was no longer almost transcendent of what happened actually in real life. And it became their own story of John and Henry. And eventually I just saw it for what it was, and having a comfortable distance with the characters and being able to observe like, this is the world that I have created for them. And it's now only loosely based, and they get to, whatever happens post Blue Suit is up to them in their world. And so I think that's how I really thought about Blue Suit and how I rooted myself into that film.
Yeah, I think like again, like the skeleton of the script is very much like the first draft of our script was titled something bad because I was like, if we expect it to be bad and it is bad, it's fine. Thankfully it was not bad. But like the skeleton of it was like pretty much like we were just talking and we had a conversation and I was like, oh, this is fun, you know, this was an interesting kind of nugget here, this was an interesting nugget here, just kind of like threw it up all on the wall and we're like, what are, you know, how do we structure this, how do we play around with it, because like, you know, the film all plays once through, but there's kind of like little vignettes here and there of, you know, each of our stories, And then, you know, when we decided to add the animation aspect to it is like arguably like the funnest part of the whole process. We kind of got to be like, you know, what are those feelings that you have inside when you're like a closeted teen, which are like very singular, specific feelings, and then how do you just like take all of the repression and then just like vomit it out in animation. And it's like very satisfying bringing all of that to life and doing it in like the weirdest way possible. Like, you know, in our film we have like a match cut of like Paul Blart kissing himself in the mirror to like two teens kissing in a car, and I laugh every time at it. But you know, it's there's something very healing, I guess that sounds silly, but like, you know, there's something like healing and not just like sharing this conversation with a friend of mine, but then also being like, let's bring it to life in like the craziest way possible, like in the most like no holds barred way possible, and you know, have people look at it and enjoy it and experience it. And like, there are a lot of people who, you know, aren't queer Asian American closeted teens who could be like, oh yeah, I have a crush who didn't like me back, like I know what that feels like. And you know, so there are ways that we could bring stuff that's very very specific and unique to our experiences, but also like very much universal, which was a really fun part of the process.
Oh man, where to start? My mom apologizes to me on camera, spoiler alert, for not being there for me. I never thought that would happen, honestly, as an Asian kid. So it was, you know, it was a trip. I mean, comfortably and uncomfortably. That's kind of how I really see it, as like, you know, putting yourself into your work. I mean, it kind of makes sense because it, you know, I think for me as a filmmaker, my work is always something I'm trying to figure out about myself. It's an extension of who I am, and it's an extension of what I'm thinking about, what I'm obsessing about at every time, from the music to, you know, what things look like. You know, we were really lucky to have some incredible production design from Confetti System, which is like an amazing New York-based installation artist. And it's just basically, for people who haven't seen it, it's just like streamers of glitter, you know. It's the best way for me to describe it. And it was one of those things where you know, it's like I've been following their work for so long, and then, you know, again, like through the process of making this film, they've just become my friends, you know. And like that kind of like blurred line of art imitating life, imitating art, and your sort of love and your passion kind of feeding into your work, that's really all how it comes out for me. And then obviously Dancing on My Own was a really personal story because it was about my process, in terms of coming out, not just to my friends and family, but professionally. And it was actually the first time that I had come out professionally as a director. And it's funny looking back now, I'm like, oh, obviously, why would I even worry about that? But at the time, you know, and kind of growing up in very closeted, you know, homogeneous Orange County, it kind of did feel like a risk, you know, felt like a risk to be myself. And so now I'm just stoked that feels less risky. And I hope that for any of the kids watching the film, that, you know, I don't know, you know, that these communities are out here for you. That was, you know, the main reason I really wanted to make Dancing on My Own, was because I wanted people to know, you know, we're out here. It's not actually so hard to find this community anymore, and we're here for you.
Yeah, what I love about having you talk about this and then us, you know, going to Dane right next is you both have members of the queer community, you know, discussing their own experiences. And I think this is like altogether the program is a really great discussion for not just us expressing our experiences, but showing families and our parents, you know, how we all feel. So like Dane, what was it like for you to make your film?
Well, it was always a goal for my film to be ultimately used as like a tool for parents to use for, you know, when they're surprised that their kid is coming out to them. Full disclosure, I never really had a traumatic coming out experience. My parents, although they do have more of a conservative background, they ultimately accepted me. But I know a lot of people who didn't have that experience. And so when I was making parental guidance suggested, every single moment of shooting and editing was, I want a kid to say, I wish I had this tool for when I came out to my parents. So yeah, that was what was going on through my head when I was making it.
And next question, it kind of relates to this whole conversation of, wanting to have something that the next generation of queer kids can see. What advice would you give to young aspiring queer storytellers and filmmakers? Let's start with Allie.
I mean, the unvarnished opinion is don't listen to anybody tell you that you can't do it. Because I got a lot of that growing up, to be totally honest. And really what it is it's fear, I think a lot of times you make decisions from a place of fear when you feel like you don't have that support system and that network. And for me, I didn't really find that until I was older. I didn't really find that until I was an adult, and I'd kind of, left my parents and moved out on my own and kind of started my own career. But like honestly, I think Gen Z is going to be just fine. If I can make any assumptions based on what I see on TikTok, I think like y'all are good. I think that there's so many great, I feel like progressive, open, brave kids that are really leading the way in terms of even claiming their own identities and refusing labels. And I feel like that's so amazing and so badass. And I just want to tell every single kid, like, keep going, and a lot of times I think as a filmmaker, you hear a lot that, oh, that idea is impossible, or that thing that you want to do, that short you want to film is impossible. But my response to that as of late has been, well, that's my job, is to make the impossible possible. So that's what I'm here for. And I think that kind of taking that DIY energy and like, let's make it work, it has really been like the most, I think the most helpful thing for me coming up as an independent filmmaker, just make it work, find another way, and be scrappy about it. And I think that you'll go really far.
Gosh, to follow up after that, I'll just say, Allie, I feel like we're in the same wavelength, because I'm just like nodding my head. I'm like, yes, everything to what you're saying. I definitely agree wholeheartedly on all of that. And if I would add anything, I would just continue to press on to this idea that something I said earlier is that film, TV, media, so long we have been seeing the same stories, the same faces, the same types of folks on camera, behind camera. And I think we live in an age right now that is so important that like you can have the power to put your face in front of the camera. You do have the power to create that film you've always wanted to create. And it doesn't take much. It like, to what Allie was saying, that DIY energy, like we need to be scrappy. And, my day job is like looking at Gen Z material, digital content and whatnot. And I fully agree. Like I see them just like absolutely crushing it on like TikTok. And I'm just like, they're so resourceful. And I just want to encourage the future generation that like, your story matters. Like screw whoever is telling you that like you can't make a film about two queer Asian men who maybe are in love and maybe who aren't, and one moved away, like maybe that would be something that you'd actually accept like 10 years ago. But here in 2021, like you can go ahead and make it. And you don't need that many things to actually bring that into fruition, bring that to life. Like for myself, I didn't have all the money in the world to make my film, but then I did a Kickstarter. And then just to make sure that we actually got some funding and paid our actors and our crew. So if there's a will, there's a way. And I think what's really beautiful, although we're like in a pandemic and that's terrible, but I think we have really relied on digital media to stay connected. And if anything, that has really brought in this idea of what digital community looks like, that a person like myself here in LA, I can connect with folks in Seattle, in Hawaii, in New York, you know, with a click of a button, and then learn from these folks. And I think nothing's stopping us now more than ever from learning and getting mentorship and getting community and learning from folks who do look like us.
Oh, those are really great responses. Just to add on to that, I would say, yeah, trust the process and stay consistent. No matter how odd or how quirky your content is, there is an audience for you. And also participating in things like this, like film festivals and you know, community screenings and whatnot, just so you can support other people that make similar content as you, is also really important too.
Yeah, plus one everybody. I think like I think like you can't do this alone. Like I think everybody here will tell you like we are part of a community and our community is always growing. Like the way I talked to Kevin, and like I talked to Kevin when we were making our film, Kevin talked to me when he was making his film. Like I've been talking to Allie, we met at another film festival. Like I've now met Dane. Like meet people, like find your people, and they can be people who maybe are in the same place as you, but also who have maybe done more than you. Like if you see a film at a film festival that you really like reach out to the filmmaker, say like, hey, I really like this, can we talk? Like most of the time we will say yes, people will say yes. And like it's okay, because we know what it's like to be where you are, to like have not done this before. I mean, like the only reason I could do most of the things that I did on my films because like my friend and mentor, Andrew On, who's like made feature films on his own, was my producer. And I was like, I don't know how to do this. And he'd be like, that's okay, let me show you. And like, that's why I was able to make a film. And now I've learned. And now like, I would love to do that for somebody else. So reach out to people because we're around. And two, there's always, you know, there's the advice of like, oh, just go shoot on your phone, take it or leave it, do it if you want, doesn't matter. I think like watch films with a critical lens. Like I went to film school and then I dropped out. So if you want to do that, that's fine, but stay in school. But like watch movies critically. Like every choice that you see made in a film, whether it's how the actor turns their head, what color the background is, how close the shot is, how they say their line, what they're wearing, all of that is a choice that a director or somebody made. And there's a reason for it. So like watch films and like look at them critically and ask yourself like, why were these choices made? Because that's what filmmaking is. It's taking script to screen, right? And so just watch movies that you like and write down why you like them. Watch movies you don't like and write down why you don't like them. I felt an immense pressure to like films that I don't actually like, because that's what film school people like to do. But like generally speaking, the history of film has been like defined by like white dudes. And it's like, of course I don't like what old white dudes like. I'm not an old white dude. So it's okay to like what you like. Like, don't feel bad about liking things that are maybe unconventional. Like someone made it, someone made money off of it, someone gave money to make that. Like you can 100% do the same thing. So don't feel bad about yourself. Don't feel bad about what you like. And just like watch a ton of shit. Watch a ton of stuff. Read scripts. A lot of scripts are very available. Like read scripts before you watch films and then read the script again and then see what differences were made. That's filmmaking. That's it. There's no secret sauce. You just have to do it. And it's really difficult to do because it costs a lot of money. But the more you can absorb, the more you can watch, the more you can listen, like the better you're going to be when your shot comes.
Wow, all of that was such amazing advice. I kind of wish I had heard all of this like a couple of years ago. We have just enough time for our last question, which is like, what have you been up to during the pandemic? Like, do you have any new projects that we can look forward to in the near future? Let's go with Allie.
Oh, what haven't I been doing during the pandemic? Really, I've been baking a lot, and yeah, I actually wrote a TV pilot, guys. I'm gonna shoot a little proof of concept for it. I'm really excited. It's called All I Want Is Everything, and it's a love story set in the queer Asian rave scene. as you can tell, a little bit of a continuation. And yeah, we're gonna shoot a little something for it next month. So stay tuned. If you want to follow any of my work, I'm on Instagram at Alexandra Cuerdo, and obviously also definitely hit me up if you have any questions or ever want any advice. I'm available.
Well, during the pandemic, I started this virtual web series called Lonesome. It's hosted by a ghost puppet, and he's interviewing various hobbyists, artists, entrepreneurs, professionals about surviving the new paranormal, the new paranormal. Okay, he's a ghost. All right. So yeah, it's on YouTube. I'm almost done with my 30th episode so far. So it's pretty fun. So you can look me up on YouTube. I'm also very accessible on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, the works. So thank you.
I am definitely looking it up right after this. I'm very excited to watch it. What about you, Kevin? What have you been working on?
Yeah, so for me, I've just been doing a lot of writing and reading, whether it be scripts or books, watching film and TV day in, day out. And so I've gotten a chance to write a couple short films, and I'm actually preparing to write a TV pilot, which is really exciting. And this TV pilot, what I can share right now is that my goal is to have the world be set in a Vietnamese strip mall located in the South. So look out for that. It'll be fun. And I'm also pretty easily accessible. You can find me on Instagram at Kevin J. Wing _. And then on Twitter, it's just at Kevin J. Wing, no underscore. Someone took my name on Instagram. Don't ask, I don't know. But yes, please follow me, ask me questions, everything. Would love to connect. Thank you.
Awesome. And what about you, Niki?
Yeah, so for Where You Be in High School, the short's actually being optioned and developed into a show. So very, very exciting stuff. It's gonna take forever because things take forever, but very exciting. And I'm developing a feature film that I wrote last year and was able to, I did a CAPE fellowship with, which if you were an Asian screenwriter, like you should know about CAPE, it's fantastic. And I've written a couple of pilots as well, just kind of like looking to get some samples out there. Allie, I was actually going to be like, do you want to read my pilot? Because I would love your feedback.
100.
So yeah, yes, great, perfect. And I read yours, so we have to talk about that. But yeah, that's what I'm doing. Just, it sounds like I'm writing a lot, but I'm not. So if you're not writing a lot right now, that's okay, because we're in a pandemic. Most of the time I'm not writing. Sometimes I do write. So that's what's happening. But thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for sharing your stories with us. And I am so glad to have this program to share with all of our audiences. And yeah, thanks so much for this conversation. And thank you to the audience for joining us for the 9th annual Seattle Asian American Film Festival. If you haven't already, please take a moment to fill out our festival participant survey. There's a link in your confirmation email. Data from the surveys help us get grants and sponsorships that make this festival possible. And it's another way that you can support SAAFF. You can check out other programs on seattleaaff.org and get your tickets there. On behalf of Seattle Asian American Film Festival, thank you, stay safe, and stay healthy.